Hello and welcome to another episode of What Does It Mean to Be Human, a podcast on life, meaning, and everything. I'm Ron Saylor, joined by my good mate Ben Gare, and boy, have we got a show for you today, right? We've got a big show as always, two guys having a good chat about what it means to be human, our truth, what it means to us, and how we like to share it with you guys, our audience. So, Ben, welcome again to another episode, mate. It's always, I just want to take this time just to actually acknowledge you for who you are and what you do and what you bring to this podcast. You bring a lot of good insight, a lot of clarity and sensibility in what you share, and a lot of it you share from your heart, from your own experience, and from your experience as a practitioner. And I'm totally blessed and grateful to be part of this with you, mate. So thank you so much for this. And I just wanted to start the show by acknowledging you for who you are and what you do and what you bring to this podcast, mate.
Yeah, look, thanks, mate. Keep going like that, and the emotion's going to kick in high core. So, yeah. So I don't totally break down crying. Yeah, thank you. It's been been 2 weeks in our world that we didn't do this. The last one I kind of shared that I was just off on a trip, my first time on a plane in a few weeks, in a few years. Up to far north Queensland tropics and seeing some close family and stuff like that. So yeah, that 2 weeks has been intense to say the least. So yeah, there's quite a bit to delve into here, and I'm sure it'll all come out. So hence why I haven't even really had a day to myself to pull in the harvest of all of that's happened, because it's just been a bit of a relentless ride of some big emotional stuff, coming. So hence I appreciate the acknowledgement, and yeah, trying to hold it together here too, maybe on some level. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in a short nutshell, which I'm sure we'll pull apart now. But yeah, and you, mate, how's your week been?
Yeah, I've been good, mate. I've been good. Before I go into that, I mean, I just want to come back to you and just say, and mate, even if you do break down, it's okay, right? It's all part of the process, and I know you're open to that too.
Yeah.
And mate, I had no intention of actually acknowledging you, right? It's not like I said it preemptively. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe that was the segue into the heart, into the just to be vulnerable in the sharing and the experience. Mate, I've been good. As we all know, we kind of had about a 3-4 week journey with my process around what I was going through in July. That's definitely transpired, and I'm done with that experience now. So for me, it's been getting back on track. Doing what I love, taking action steps, continuing with what my purpose here is to do and to empower people to live the lives they love, and help them build support and help them build support structures for them to maintain that. So I'm back to doing that. I'm back to exercising. My nutrition has changed, mindset's changed. Mate, feeling the love within myself, feeling the love in my relationships, feeling the love with the world, without its ups and downs. Naturally, right? I'm not perfect. Don't get the wrong idea. I fuck up like we all do, but really coming back to me, knowing who I am, and knowing the importance of knowing who I am, and how that importance gives me the foundation and the structure, and it grounds me to anchor so I can create all that I love. So that's where I've been, mate. So for me, it's been pretty good. I've been kind of happy that now I'm taking that step, taking that action, and now I'm regenerating that momentum, because we kind of talk about when you want to create something, keep the momentum happening, right? And momentum requires action. So that's kind of where I've been, mate. So been in a much better place, more grounded, clear place, which has been great.
Awesome. So I think we kind of off air were talking about what was the themes of what's been going on, and we kind of came to relationships, and we've actually recorded another one on relationships before, but the quality wasn't sort of up for broadcast. So we've kind of scrapped that one, and it'll probably be a different track, but definitely definitely that's kind of been my theme, at least for the last 2 weeks, going into our, yeah, look, relationship stuff has started very much in the Amazon for me, because it was, my partner at the time we were in separate countries because we were traveling, and I was just to go do my data in the jungle, and broke up with me sort of the day before going into a deep journey into self. And so what I thought was my journey with ayahuasca at that time, and then obviously lockdown started to happen, all that kind of stuff, and I got stuck in the jungle. It became about whatever I thought it was going to be at the time. It now became about relationships, you know, and I've been on this huge journey of sort of healing, some of the biggest ones I've ever had, you know, at least some of the most important. And one of them was healing a relationship I had that ended 5 years ago, and at that time, this was 2 years ago in the jungle. I reached out to her, and I hadn't spoken to her in 3 years by that point, because it was just too painful, you know. And it came up really, really clear in my journey into relationships that one needed to be healed. You know, not every past relationship I feel needs to be healed. It just was what it was, and it's okay to acknowledge it at the time, and whatever. It's, maybe there's stuff to unpack there, maybe there isn't. Maybe it's just acknowledging how beautiful it was, or that it passed and you're no longer in the same places. But this was really my biggest relationship, and we worked together. We were kind of very much in the tantra world together, and yeah, it started there, and it feels like it's still going on, because in the last 2 weeks there's been more healing with her, more healing with my very first relationship, in reality, my first love. So that ended a while ago, but I don't feel like it weighs too much on me anymore. But obviously that's still, and again, I still consider her family, and very, very close on a friendship level, you know. So yeah, that's who I was visiting up there, not her specifically, but the family. And so there's a healing around that, and then stuff with my dad as well. He sort of got put into emergency surgery almost as soon as I left. So it was kind of a bit of a roller coaster of, wow, okay, like, we're all getting older, we all have stuff and health, and, you know, being able to fix and heal parts of relationships while they're in front of us, you know. And so it's just been a bit of a journey like that for the last 2 weeks, and so many rabbit holes to go down with that. And as I say, I haven't even had the time to go into it myself, but yeah, here we are.
Yeah, mate, here we are indeed. And that's huge, right? I mean, one of those things is enough for someone to process on their own. And you've brought a trifecta to the table. So, and I guess it's like, I mean, like you're doing, you're kind of acknowledging everything that's going on, and you're still in that raw stage of like processing and integrating. It's like you just said, you haven't had a chance to yourself, right? So you've kind of like been away. And when you're not in your own environment, in your own comfort, and you're living in someone else's environment, or in outside of what you know it's comfortable, you're constantly, like for me, it's constantly like grounding, anchoring, trying to find place. Even though I may be comfortable in family, extended family, friends, it's still not my place, not my energy, right? For me. So it's kind of like trying to still find that place where I can anchor, and then having stuff come up with your dad, right? Family members, and then you land back in Sydney, and it's like straight again off the plane to being of service to someone else. And where's your space and all that? How are you still relating to yourself to keep yourself right, grounded and anchored, so you can still be of service to others while you're trying to be of service to yourself? And you know, from my experience, it takes a lot of time to kind of find that balance and that strength in yourself, because it's kind of it's easy to like just go with it all and get caught up in the in the momentum or in the whirlwind, right? In the hurricane or whatever that's coming swooping, and you're getting caught up in it, to like pull back and kind of go, okay, this is what's happening around me, right? This is all my external stimulus. And how has it impacted me on the internal? And how am I dealing with that? And from what I'm hearing with your share, so you're kind of like landing with all these, you're kind of like juggling all this stuff at the same time and trying to find your place and your purpose and how to approach it, how to deal with it, and at the same time still get back into yourself here.
Yeah, it's very much been sort of parking my process on the side, not avoiding it. Like the difference between avoiding your process and just going, the self dialogue that goes, now's just not the moment. You got to kind of keep going. It's and I'm very hermetic as a person. Like I like my own space and time and to digest all the things I got going on or whatever. So it was like, yeah, you're good. And it was kind of like, I knew it was get yourself to Sunday yesterday for us recording now. And then you can let go. And then it kind of Sunday didn't quite happen either. So it's like today after this phone call, I'm out. So it's very, very aware that it's just like, and as I say, just the acknowledgement brought up emotions enough to go, okay, so that's all happening in the background. It's just how much is there. And I don't mind going into the process. It's just giving it the time and the space it needs to be digested, because they're a biggie, big bunch of sort of emotions going on there. So that's sort of been how I've been approaching it so far, because sometimes, especially practitioners, we have to put our stuff on the side and be there because that's our choice, and that takes practice too, to build up that strength and resilience, because don't think you're just going to rush into being able to do everything for everybody else and your own stuff not be there. That's just unrealistic, and even like not getting triggered by clients or stuff that they say. This is what the internal process looks like, because once you've dealt with it within you, you can pretty much hear and see whatever and still be present, because that issue doesn't trigger a part of you, so that's in terms of clients, that's the easy part of the more work you've done on yourself, and the better you know you and gone into those uncomfortable spots, you can just hold a clean, clear space that whatever they share with you, you're not in trigger town and you're not suddenly plunged into your own emotional process because of something they've said. So that's sort of a bit of the basics of like parking your stuff on the side and going, hey, now's not the time. It's just like, we can happy to go there. Just give me 24, 48 hours, whatever it is, till I have the space to honor what has been, and because part of the other process that's happened in the last 2 weeks is like, it was my first travel in plane trip, at least in 2 years, and that was really cool for me, because I used to travel quite a lot. I've been to over 70 countries, and it was just like, at times it was weekly I would be on a flight somewhere to do a workshop, to do something or other, and I kind of love airports, and it's just like it's just this adventure of, oh, what's next, and the newness of challenging yourself, and it felt like the first time in 2 years out of crazy lockdowns and isolation and the weirdness that's been going on, to go, this is actually what my life looks like again. It is like going to a restaurant and going out and hanging with family and just being able to have that experience. So that was initially the beautiful positive part of like, woo, yeah, cool. I feel like myself again, which was a kind of cool realization in the beginning. Then launched into, okay, there's stuff, so beautiful part of having this last 2 years at home and integrating is because I moved so much and because I traveled so much. There's a part of you that's not running from something, but never properly able to digest everything that's going on in the moment, because it's the constant stimulation. It's like new places, new people, new things, you're always adjusting and you're always staying on that surrendered edge, because there's nothing to hold on to, especially if you're traveling countries and different cultures and all that kind of stuff. If you can be on a plane in an hour and then you're in a completely different place, you're then having to, the sights, the sounds, the smells, every single part of your senses is being vigilant to what is around you, you know. And so there's this beautiful surrendered presence that you have to drop into on some level, because there's nothing to hold on to. So that's very much what travel sort of did for me, was open up, being present to a lot of things, and exposing myself to different places and cultures and people, and figuring out what it is to me to be human on some level, because we're such similar creatures. No matter what changes, there's a lot that tracks as common experience, human experience. So yeah, it was very much a beautiful juxtapose in there, thinking that it was like, whoa, yeah, I feel myself, and then whoa, okay, you know, the things that I've potentially been avoiding or potentially had enough distractions to not dive into those emotions came up pretty quickly, you know. So yeah, it was an interesting sort of bringing back to reality. It's just, this is the life and this is the purpose, you know, and this is what I choose to do, because that's what I feel is important in what it takes to heal, you know, is being present to what is today, as opposed to what is the story, you know, because we've all got stories built up, but you change your relationship to the story in any moment, and that's about being present.
Yeah, man, that was just amazing. Thanks for sharing that. That was really nice to listen to, mate. And like, so many things were coming up for me to share, like with what you were saying. Like, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. But I think what's kind of landed the most for me is in just the last part of your share is the level of vulnerability, right? To able to actually allow yourself to step into that. And there's so much power in being vulnerable. And a lot of the times we come, like, I know I grew up knowing, whether it was taught consciously or unconsciously, is like, don't be vulnerable because you're going to get hurt. There's no power, you know, there's no power in this sort of space. This space is just like fear and scared, and yeah, you know, you just can't get anywhere being vulnerable. But in that last part of your share, and I totally relate to the traveling. I mean, I've traveled, not to the extent that you have, but what I do, what comes for me from my travels, traveling alone, is, I'm not talking about traveling with your partner or friends, but traveling alone on that, I can't remember what you called it, the edge, something edge, but to me it's like, when you said it, was like, you know, that's the edge of vulnerability, right? Because you don't know where you're going to land. You don't know how it's going to be in that country. You don't know how those people are going to be. You don't know your environment the first time. Second time, you're familiar with your environment, but doesn't mean it's going to be the same experience, right? But you're a little bit more familiar, you're a little bit more grounded. And I've always said traveling is a wonderful way to get to know yourself on a deeper level. Really, so I think it's one of the most profound ways of personal development that you can do, is to travel,
Yeah.
and challenge yourself on that level beyond being a tourist. Right? I'm not talking about being a tourist,
Yeah.
and you're not talking about being a tourist.
No.
We're not talking about sightseeing. We're talking about landing into the country, landing into the city. We're talking about landing into its culture, its essence, you know, the flavor, the sense, all the senses that you talk about, right? That's what we're kind of talking about. And how do those senses impact us? How do we digest? How do we process? How do we integrate? Then how do we actually put ourselves in that space and be in that space as ourselves, right? How do we relate to all these different experiences and all these different sensations that we're having? So I really got that in your share about the traveling, and how much joy it actually brings you. Because I've done this where I called it traveling, but essentially I was just running away. right? And it was like I didn't want to deal with my problems that I had at home. So I thought I can just travel the world and I can, they're not going to be there. And I've got to say, I had some fun, but was it a great experience? Overall, it wasn't great or not great, but did I really benefit as much as I could have? Probably not, right? In hindsight, I can sit back and go, I was really just running away from stuff that I didn't want to deal with, which is different to when you're traveling and you're still dealing with your stuff because every country has a different vibe and it will challenge you, right? And if you can be in that moment and go, yeah, you know what? I can feel this. This is my triggers. This is what's coming up at my belief, fear or anger, whatever emotion it may be, right? And then you kind of sit in it and say, how does it process? How does it evolve where I am right now? And how do I bring it back? Because for me, the power, what I learned from that journey was the power was to bring it back here to me. Because it's easy to like just let it all out and just get caught up in what's happening. But the power is here. And I feel like that's where you're at, mate. I feel like, you're at that point where you're not dismissing what's happening for you. You're not dismissing what's occurred over the last couple of weeks. It's like you shared. You still got to function, right? You still need to function. So you're aware of what's happening for you and you're going, okay, you know what, for now, it's like you said, let's get through to Sunday. Now, it's like after this podcast, it's Benny time.
Yeah, totally.
But right now, for the next bit of time that we're here, mate, you're 100% here and committed.
Yeah.
This is you relating to you, to me, and to all our listeners, right? And that takes, and this is what the word that kept coming up for me when you were sharing was self-respect. This is someone who respects themselves, who loves themselves. This is someone who is clear and has done a lot of work to get to this point and not blame their ex-partners for how they're feeling or blame everything that occurred in their relationships or how it was with the parents or, why this or why that. It's someone who's taken responsibility for himself and has respect for himself to know that this is what I've got to do, right? My time is here, but I know what I've got to do because you got to still facilitate. And just on the facilitation, what came up for me when you were sharing about that was it's sometimes what I find in those moments when I'm at my most vulnerable, I probably give the best sessions because I can actually tune into the client's vulnerability and have them actually step further or deeper into their own vulnerability because I'm creating that space and because I'm in it. So that thought came up for me, and then I had a few memories where I've taken people through that, where I've taken myself through that, and I thought, wow, that's actually quite a powerful thing. And this is where I talk about vulnerability being a really powerful place to sit in. And there's a lot of power in it, just as there's a lot of depower, right? It depends on our mindset and where we are and how we approach it and how we sit in it and then how we navigate from that space. And it's not just vulnerability, a lot of different things. But, this is the key. This was a key element that was coming up for me from what you were sharing, mate.
Yeah, kind of the phrase that keeps kind of popping into my head is like that kind of life begins outside of your comfort zone. It's the more that we can step into the unknown and be okay in that space and in that vulnerability or the openness or the unknownness of what is, you open a different door to reality. It's less like sitting down and manifesting what's going to be next. It's manifesting who's right in the space at the right time in the right moment. The amount of people I've randomly met in weird places and become very deep, or they've created a whole process because I was just in the openness of no mind and allowing reality to inform me what it is I need to know rather than trying to hold it all together and go, yeah, well, I know this is the way it's going to be. It's more actually about show me, saying to the universe, saying to whatever higher power, it's like, what do I need to know now? And that's, and when I say, yeah, travel, I definitely agree with you. Like, I definitely didn't mean touristy stuff and usually when I go, it's 3 months and I don't I don't stay in sort of fancy places. It's not about sort of the holiday. It's about the journey, you know, and because I've gone in with like just a vague idea of the intention of what I want to create, but then allowing the mystery to unfold and again, not rigidly have it needs to look a certain kind of way. That's when it becomes, and it very much started because I used to be very chronically shy as a teenager and stuff like that, you know. Talking to people randomly was so outside my wheelhouse that, and especially before sort of the internet was in our pockets every 2 seconds, travel made me learn to talk to people. You know, it's just like, if you wanted to figure out where the next place was, where to stay, how to do this, how to do that, especially if it wasn't even in English, even worse. Personally, you know, it's just like, you know, it's just like all the story of like, you know, I can't even think at the moment, but yeah, not good enough, or there's something wrong. It's just like, no, you just have to figure it out because this is where you are. So yeah, very much so in terms of traveling being one of those beautiful expressions of inviting a very different experience into your world and being able to process in a very different kind of way. So I don't know if there's anything that came up within any of that.
No, all I would say to any of our listeners who haven't traveled on their own to this level, go and give it a go. Try it out if you can, if it's within your means, within your reason, if it's appropriate, because it's fun.
Yeah, as well. That was the other bit that was like solo. Yeah, I've done a lot of that solo as well. I've traveled with partners and things as well, but yeah, it's when you're, because there's the safety in the other, that you don't have to step out of the comfort, you know, because you've always got someone to chat to, you've always got someone to go have dinner with, you always got someone to, you know, explore something that you wanted to explore with, and then you maybe don't get that uncomfortable bit of having to go up and just sit with others, you know. So yeah, that was another key point in a lot of that. And I'm an only child as well, so I'm good in my own space, but it's a whole nother level to start pushing that discomfort within self, you know.
Yeah, man, and all that comes back to is how do we relate to ourselves, right? And like, how do we relate to others? And what's our relationship to ourselves and to others, and, you know, essentially the world around us? And, you know, this is kind of like what you're sharing. And, you know, today, in your experience of the last couple of weeks, has for me has been huge around those relationships, those intimate relationships too, like on such a deep level that, you know, they hold so much for us, you know, and they're a strong part of our lives, and things we don't just forget. You know, you never really forget your first love, or a strong love in your life that you've had in relationships. You know, on some level, they're always going to impact you, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And I know one of my old partners, which we're really great friends now, and I love her now. I mean, you know, we say I love you all the time, but she's like my sister now, you know. We're like, you know, family. And it's not, I mean, that's the only one. Doesn't always happen, but there are some partners that you have that are just, you know, for me, the lesson there was that, you know, we probably were just meant to be really best mates and not be partners. And that's the journey we kind of explored. And now we're just like great mates, you know, and she's family to me. And when I see her, I don't go down that road of like when we were partners. It's more like, oh, he's my older sister, you know. It's like, you know, he's family. And I really get excited about seeing her on that level. And there are partners where, you know, I don't even think about anymore. It's just, you know, it's just the way it is. Different partners impact us differently. So the level of intimacy, and I'm not just on the physical intimacy, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about on a deeper heart level connection of intimacy, you know, that goes beyond the physical. talking about through all time and space, connected to our hearts, expanding forth. That's kind of what I'm talking about, you know. And that comes with family as well, our immediate family, you know. And you know, we've both shared about family and our experience and what we've gone through. And again, they just leave their imprint, right? They leave their markings. They leave their you know, all the dynamics that we go through and how we kind of navigate our way through all that sort of stuff, you know. And then when something happens to family, it's mate, it kind of takes you out of that track, and you know, you start all of a sudden it's a whole new paradigm of thought, and you know, what's in the processing around that, and sometimes you kind of feel like, well, what the fuck is going on now? Like, you know, this is a whole new experience, right? This is something completely new, right? So, you know, there's I mean, this is I'm kind of like sharing off what you shared earlier, Ben. There's just so much happening there for you, mate. And I mean, I think you do it, mate. I know you, right? I know you've got this, and I know you'll reach out, and I know you'll ask for support, and I know you'll do what you need to do to, you know, integrate and process. And like you shared earlier, you're kind of still in the early stages of all this, and it'll be interesting to hear how you're progressing next week. And I think, you know, me personally, and I'm sure our viewers would love to hear your progress and see how you're transitioning and where you're at in a week's time, and see what's come up for you and what you've had to go through, and whatever you're comfortable sharing. Right, as always, you know, we only ever share what we're comfortable with, and you know what's appropriate, and you know, we're very familiar and respectful of boundaries on this podcast with ourselves and even with you, our listeners. Right, self respect and having boundaries is important for self growth, for knowing who you are.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And I think what's coming up there, it's okay to take your time as well, and whatever time that looks like. You know, with this big relationship that ended 5 years ago, we didn't have a single word in 3 of those first years. You know, because it was just too painful, and both ways. You know, like, to some degree, and it was like, no, this is actually somebody important enough for me to unpack anything that's holding us back from at least sharing love. So yeah, it very much, yeah. And then when it started, it was just like, this is just opening the door, you know, we're to healing again, you know. And it took 3 years to begin that process, and that just began the dialogue, and it still goes today, you know, to some degree. And we live in different countries at the moment, so there's always a part of us that's like, it'll only really start to integrate when we catch up in person. You know, I think that's going to be a big
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so we kind of don't talk a lot, because there's so much so much there that is only really going to come into light in person, you know. So taking the time, again, she's worth it to me to make the effort to sit in my own discomfort of, you know, I could blame, I could do all this other stuff, and figure out, point out the bits that were wrong or that went wrong, or but that's not it. It's my responsibility and my work to be comfortable with what was and still have love, you know. So come back into that true space of being in the heart, because this is someone I deeply cared about. So any of the kind of anger or bitterness or rage, or any of the things that partly have a justifiable reason for being there, is only me. The only person that can do anything about those feelings is me. And to me, it's not worth putting that onto her or feeling that against her, because she was just doing what she felt was right in the moment. there's been apologies kind of around and stuff like that. So that began the process of acknowledging things were maybe not done the best way, but that's all of us learning. That's all of us kind of, again, being present to what is, as opposed to the expectation of this is what's supposed to be. And so that takes time, you know, that's, especially if it was as big as it was for me, that one and her. It's okay not to rush it. And again, if you just need space, like I needed space, I just no contact, delete all the social media. I don't want to know what you're doing out there in the world because it's going to hurt. And until I could get enough strength within me to start opening that door again, because she's worth it, it was like, I need time. And then, as I say, deep in ayahuasca, she kicked my ass and said, it's time. It's time. Time to not keep your heart closed. Because that's the only person that's hurting is me. And so we began the healing. And that journey still goes today, you know? 5 years and it's, yeah, it's still there. And sometimes that's just what it takes. And again, like you said, like not every relationship requires that or needs it or even deserves it probably on some level. But
Yeah.
the ones that are true love are gonna have that in them. And this informs all your future relationships or all your, parents, siblings, like there's this huge trickle effect that can come out of healing that love, because that love is, again, it's yours. It's what's inside you. It's less about the person that triggered it or did whatever they did or whatever happened. It's about you dealing with being open to love in any moment, you know. And some are worth doing the work for, and some it's just not necessary. It just is.
Yeah, Benny. Nice, mate. That was awesome. Thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for sharing. And I totally agree, mate. You know, when it comes to partners, yeah, look, you know, look, I don't really want to say much more than what you shared. I think what you shared was beautiful. But yeah, look, some partners are worth fighting for. Some you just completely leave them alone. Some relationships just, you know, sometimes it goes beyond this lifetime too. You know, for me, it's, you know, it's beyond what we know sometimes. And you kind of touched on that before, because there are things we know, there are things we don't know. And then, you know, we've got to consider there are things that we don't know that we don't even know. So, and, you know, there's so much mystery out there, like you said, and there's so much opportunity. So, and that's the wonderful thing about life, you know, and that's why I love life. And that's why I love doing this podcast. There's so much to unravel, you know, there's so much to explore, you know, there's so much to grow. There's so much in finding out who we are and our purpose and our true nature, you know, being the predominant creative forces in our lives. There's so much, you know, there's so much to explore, so much to do. So, yeah, mate, that was great. Thank you so much for that.
And just quickly there, it's just, and this is where life becomes the process, not in a like constantly analyzing and like trying to look for the triggers and everything or anything like that. I mean, just again, using what's right in front of you to go deeper within yourself. And again, yes, we can go back and clean up internal stories we've had from childhood and all that kind of stuff. So that's part of our work. And then at a certain place, certain time in your own development, you start to just use what's right in front of you, because you're living it. You're in the process. There's you can do it both ways. You can do it retroactively or actively in the moment. So that's the beauty of, again, living in that vulnerable open state of being present to what is now, and that'll inform you what work there is to be done. Because again, if you're not triggered by that, then there's no charge, and you're just at peace with whatever the story is. But as soon as there is some kind of high emotion, there's obviously some reasoning behind it. And it may not look exactly what you think it is, because again, if we knew all of our stuff, we would have already unpacked it all and would have moved on. But there is some story being triggered, whether again it's because you missed love as a child or something like that. It could be a very convoluted idea of what's actually going on behind any of it. So it's about sort of being present to what is and starting to just slowly unpack in your own time, your own space, in your own way, how to again just come back to the heart.
I agree. Yeah, mate, well said. That's so true. Was there anything else you wanted to share, Ben, before we kind of finish up?
No, I think that's probably pretty good, mate. Yeah, this one's probably going to be unpacking for the next few weeks. So I'm sure there's plenty of story to come from here. But I think that's a good sort of place to open up what it means to be human and what it looks like to do the work and to just keep going.
Yeah, totally. We'll be definitely having more conversations around this over the next couple of weeks for sure.
So yeah, thank you for the acknowledgements and creating the space for me to do this as well. And I'm always happy to be vulnerable and share what's actually really going on. But that becomes easier when it's, even though it's been recorded and been shown to others, it's easier when it's a mate that I can just be that, because it just is.
And that's important, mate. It's important to feel safe, right? It's really important to feel safe, because when we feel safe, we feel comfortable, and we just I don't know. It's just nice to have that feeling. And yeah, man, it's it's just my service to humanity, right? That's what I want to do. I want people to be safe and to be able to tap deep into who they really are. Really, I'd really want people to start to get to know who they really are and their power as humans. And I know that's part of what you want to do too. And that's why we're doing this show. Really, is to really self-empower people to live their best lives. So thank you, Ben, again for sharing everything, mate. Thanks for your time. Thank you to all our listeners and our viewers. Stay tuned for the next podcast or 2 or 3. We'll be unpacking what's been happening with Ben, and if naturally occur when he wants to share, I'm sure he'll want to, because I'm quite interested to see what's going to happen over the next week or so.
And because sometimes too, it's helpful for us when we verbalize it out loud, we get our own insights. It's because we often have it, but again, by sharing it, you have to articulate it to someone else, and then it helps you to put the pieces together and to start to integrate these things. So that's why it can always be really helpful, beneficial to be able to find someone to outwardly dialogue this with, because you get your own insights. You're not even looking for anyone to give you feedback or to give you, we're not here to fix others or anything like that if that hasn't been asked for or whatever. It's just about sharing and being able to go there, because sometimes our own insight comes up.
And it's also about listening. It's really just listening to the other person. I'm not sitting here trying to fix you or offer you advice. I'm just listening, and I'm taking out from your sharing what's relevant, right? And that's how we kind of learn from each other. And ideally, to me, that's the healthiest way for me working with people. It's not about fixing, but it's listening, right? For me, it all starts with listening, right? So anyway, let's close off the show.
Absolutely. Thank you, and look forward to chatting next week.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.